From a distance, these five Submariners, Rolex Submariners, may look alike, may look very similar, but in reality only one of them is real. The other four are counterfeits of varying quality. We're going to discuss the various levels of quality in Rolex replicas in this case, and we're going to talk about the Asian replicas, the Japanese replicas, and the Swiss counterfeits or replicas. Each has a different level of quality. Each one is closer and closer to the actual genuine watch, and we're going to show you some of the things to look at and to determine the quality of the watch. Here we have at the bottom of the food chain a copy of a Rolex two-tone Submariner, a blue-faced two-tone Submariner. This watch actually uses a Asian movement or Chinese movement, typically made in China, typically made from stamped metal, very low quality, very low lifespan of a movement. The watch itself, from a distance, looks fairly accurate, but there's a couple tricks that we can do to help us quickly spot these watches. First thing I do for all Rolexes, all the sports models, is to set the date to 6, something that has a 6 on it, 6, 16, 26, because the 6s are typically the most inaccurate. Also what we do is look at the face and we look at the date magnification. The date magnification here actually is too low. We should have 2.5 times magnification on a Submariner. And this watch here has, if you look at the size of the date in the window, it's barely doing any real magnification at all, probably 1.5 times. That's very inaccurate for this watch. The Asian watches also have very poor quality materials. The watch itself is very light. If you look at the quality of the gold on the watch, the gold itself actually in certain spots is wearing off. Let's see. If we look right there at the base, at the top of the clasp, you notice the discoloration here. That's the sign of gold plating. In this case, very poor gold plating. There is some fingerprint oils that have got into the gold and caused it to discolor. This watch has holes in the case, indicative of watches that predate 2000. But if we look at the back here, we also notice there is a very poor quality case sticker. This is fairly common in most replicas. They have bad quality case stickers. The watch itself, again, is very light. The materials that it's made of are very poor quality. As with all Rolex Submariners, the crown guards on the watch are inaccurate as well. The crown guards here overlap the bottom of the crown and are poor quality. The crown itself is too small on this watch as well. Notice the ticking movement of the second hand. It's a little bit more jumpy than a genuine Rolex. It's because the beats per minute on this particular movement are actually less than on a Rolex movement, and that causes the second hand to tick inaccurately. Here we've adjusted the date to 20, and here we can see some more inaccuracies in the date font. That's an incorrect 2-digit on the font for this particular watch. It's very low quality, and it may seem to be more accurate than it looks from this video, but the actual color of the watch is a purplish color as opposed to the blue that a genuine Rolex has. In that regard, it's very easy to spot. If you see a watch that has sort of a royal purple, that's an indication that the dial itself may be a counterfeit dial. Moving up a bit, here we have another Rolex counterfeit. This counterfeit actually uses a Miyota movement. It's a Japanese movement. The watch still is very light compared to a genuine watch. The movement itself is more accurate, more reliable. But on this watch here, we can look at the date magnification. Date magnification is better, probably 2 times, but it's still not accurate. look at the open font on this particular watch. That is inaccurate for this particular model. And also look how the font is low in the date window. Also very, very inaccurate. The crown guards here also are of poor quality. And something that's very common on replicas is a bad bezel pearl. The bezel pearl on this watch does not illuminate. It's simply a dot placed on the outside of the bezel insert. Very poor. If we look at the back, it has a very poor holographic sticker on the case back. All in all, while it may appear to be accurate, it is actually fairly inaccurate. The Japanese watches are a step usually above the Asian movements and quality of materials. The watch itself is a little bit heavier, but the band still feels very light in comparison to a genuine Rolex. Here's a Rolex, a fake Submariner that actually uses an ETA movement. The font on the date actually fits in the window. The magnification still is pretty poor, and it's an older font, different than the font they use on 2000 or greater watches. The bezel pearl on this watch also kind of protrudes from the case, as we can see here. It's a little bit better than the previous watch, still fairly poor. The various levels of quality in Rolex counterfeits varies tremendously between the three artificial categories, Asian, Chinese, Japanese, and Swiss. You can have some really well-made Japanese watches that actually surpass the quality of certain Swiss-based watches, but for the most part, they're good dividers to quantify the quality of a particular counterfeit. Something else to look for in most counterfeits out there will only have 60 clicks around the bezel. A genuine Rolex should have 120 clicks around the bezel on a Submariner. The bezel insert quality also varies tremendously, although you have to be careful because people do replace the counterfeit bezel inserts with genuine Rolex bezel inserts, which makes that much more difficult to determine. Here we have the crown guards. The crown guards still overlap the bottom of the crown. The crown itself is a little bit bigger as it's supposed to be on this particular watch. A little bit more accurate. There's still quick things that you can pick out and look at very quickly. Always the bezel guards, the crown guards are a good indicator because I have yet to see one replica that uses actually the proper crown guards. Here we look at the back. We can see the SCLs, the solid end links. The quality here, the fit's pretty poor. But one of the things you have to be careful about Rolex is people do replace the bands themselves on genuine Rolexes with aftermarket bands. So it's difficult to quantify the bands unless someone says that it was a genuine band that came with the watch originally. For comparison's sake, here we've got a more recent Swiss replica. This one here is probably only a month or so old. It actually has eliminated some of the flaws that we've seen in some of the earlier counterfeits. One, this is an F-series case or later, no holes in the case, as it should be for current model Submariners. Two, the illumination is the luminescence is better. The bezel pearl itself actually does illuminate on this watch when you shine a light on it. The bezel pearl itself is of better quality than bezel pearls on previous watch, the other counterfeits we've taken a look at here. Although the insert itself still is pretty poor. We see some thickness around some of the markers on the bezel insert, which would be a definite giveaway. The crown is of the right size. The crown guards themselves, while they still overlap a bit, aren't as prominent on other watches. One of the things that's actually pretty scary on this watch, if we look at the magnification, this is the first replica that I've seen that has a decent magnification here on the Cyclops. Also, the date font is accurate for this particular model. Not only that, these two-tone Submariners have a gold-colored background for the date wheel. The other two-tone that we had, the counterfeit, had a white background. That's another quick way of spotting it. but this is actually accurate for this watch. The dial printing is actually fairly good. The quickest thing to spot on this are the bezel guards. The bezel guards are inaccurate. The SELs on the back are not as sharp as a genuine watch, and of course it has a bad holographic sticker, as do most of the counterfeits. Also, the color of the dial, it looks blue here in this video. It's still a little bit too purple. It has a purplish sheen to it, as do the other counterfeit two-tone that we have here. It's still good to take a look at a genuine watch, get a good feel for the looks of it. Submariners are probably one of the most copied counterfeit watches out there. You'll find a variety of different levels of quality and manufacture of these, and you'll get some like these, which, unless you know what you're looking for, if this had been a black two-tone and I wouldn't see that purplish sheen to the dial, I would have a hard time spotting this without getting a good look at the crown guards or getting a good look at the watch itself and looking at some of the other clues that are there. Even the gold is pretty good. Unlike the other gold-plated counterfeit, this gold looks fairly consistent. It even has, as does the genuine, it has gold through the clasp, which is accurate for this particular watch, as well as it has the diver extension on the back. So this is a pretty scary one. You really need to know what to look for. If you're going to spend $7,000, $8,000 on a watch, you're going to want to know what to look for, and you want to be very careful about what you buy. Always ask questions if you have any questions of the seller. And finally, here, and for comparison, we've got a genuine Submariner. The build quality of the watch is much greater. The watch is a little heavier than the counterfeits, especially in the band. The band on counterfeits are typically very light. Notice the date magnification. The date fills the window. It's an accurate date. Most importantly, the crown guards. Notice how they don't overlap the bottom of the crowns. It's an accurate crown guard. It's an F series, so there's no holes in the case. If you look at the back, it has a genuine holographic sticker. And notice how nice and neat the SELs, the solid end links, fit into the case. Dial printing, of course, is sharp. Rolex has excellent quality control, and you'll very rarely find a watch that slips by that has any kind of flaws. If we look at the bezel pearl is set into the bezel here at the top. The bezel insert itself is sharp and defined. Very high quality watch. And it's, while superficially similar to the counterfeits, it is of a better quality than the counterfeit watches. Here we have the genuine watch compared to the counterfeit watch. Notice the difference. From first glance, they're very, very similar. Magnification is almost spot on for the counterfeit, but the crown guards themselves are different. The bezel pearl is different. The bezel insert, the quality of that is different. If we look at the dial printing, it's sharper and more crisp on the genuine watch. And there are some differences between the two that are very apparent if you have them next to each other. But you need to know what to look for when you're trying to do a comparison with really only photographs, or if you have nothing to compare it to, you're seeing one on a flea market or an auction site in that regards. I hope this was helpful. This is a basic comparison of the different qualities of Rolex watches. There are some watches that are of abysmal quality that are very easy to spot, cheap plastic watches with quartz ticking movements, which Rolex only has one model that has a quartz in the Oyster line. Very easy to spot the cheap ones, but the higher quality that you get, the more difficult it is to spot the counterfeits, until you get to a point where you need to be aware of what to look for or have some level of expertise to be able to determine the difference. Again, the tools that we offer are the Replica Watch Report, The Replica Watch Report is a book designed to help people determine the authenticity of watches and to spot the counterfeit watches that are out there on the market. We're also offering a variety of videos that will go through the process and show you with actual examples of counterfeit watches what to look for, what's wrong with them, and how to spot them in comparison to a genuine watch. I hope this has been helpful. Please stop by our website, www.replicawatch.com, for further information. Thank you.